107 years. That's how long Lincoln has been in the business of making cars for. And while at one point they were the pinnacle of American luxury, this storied brand today has largely been relegated to producing luxury SUVs for affluent housewives, with no new luxury flagship cars in sight. But it wasn't always this way. Lincoln used to have the muscle that they liked to flex to truly innovate with cars like the Mark 7 and Mark 8 coupes, which boasted cutting-edge technology for American luxury cars. In fact, in some cases, these Lincolns were even better equipped than some of their European counterparts. Yet these were just scratching the surface of what Lincoln thought they could achieve. It was this car here that was the ultimate American luxury flagship that the world was robbed of. The Lincoln Sentinel, a brash V12-powered super sedan that looked like something a modern Cruella de Vil would drive, and its story doesn't disappoint. The world would first get its glimpse of the Lincoln Sentinel on January 8, 1996 at the Detroit Auto Show, and it came alongside a wave of other jaw-dropping concepts introduced by the Ford Motor Company right before the turn of the millennium, mainly the GT90 and the Ford Indigo, which all shared in the same new-edge design philosophy. The Sentinel was originally conceived as a design study for what the future of the Lincoln Town Car was to look like. Jack Telnack, who was the VP of Design at Ford, greenlit the project and sent it to Ford's Advanced Design Studio, where it was designed by Claude Lobo and his impressive team. Now, the body design of the Sentinel was an interesting mix of futurism and retro inspiration. The overall body shape was very Blade Runner-esque, with its sharp angles and impressive glass canopy. But it also had a bunch of retro influences on it taken from Lincoln's past, like its front grille shape, which was the modern interpretation of the 1940 Lincoln Continental's grille. The high slab sides of the car were an homage to the 1961 Lincoln Continental, and I like to think that the rear chrome exhaust that's molded into the body on this concept was a clear callback to the in-bumper molded exhaust of the second-generation Lincoln Continental of the 50s. With all of those retro features, though, you would really have to be told that they were there to put two and two together, because most people thought it looked more like a stealth fighter than a sedan. Once the design for the Sentinel was finished, Lincoln would then make a full-scale rolling buck of the car for display at the '96 Detroit Auto Show, and that was finished in black with blacked-out windows, and it looked super mean. Today, I think a lot of people would appreciate the sinister look of this Lincoln, but back in 1996, the initial design was met with a lot of pushback from the American public. So much so that on the second prototype version of the car, they changed the color away from black to give the car a much more neutral appearance, which I believe was a mistake. Doubling down on that sinister mystique would have made this car oh so much cooler. Nonetheless, though, it was that second prototype that was leaps and bounds more important than the all-black rolling buck, because this one actually ran in trove. This prototype was constructed at a 7/8 scale of the black rolling prototype with a 218-inch overall length, which would have meant that the full-size car would have been a massive 245 inches long, as again, this was a scaled-down model. That would have made it the same length as a Cadillac Fleetwood Series 75, which is a parking garage turn's worst nightmare. The running prototype was built on a Jaguar-based chassis as Ford owned Jag at the time, most likely something Jaguar XJ related, and the plans for this running and driving prototype were sent to the design house Ghia, whom Ford also owned at the time, in Turin, for it to be brought to life. And powering that running prototype was a glorious dual overhead cam aluminum 6-liter V12 that Ford had also placed into the Indigo concept car. And this V12 engine was actually based off of two 3-liter Ford Duratec V6s that were welded together to create a 12-cylinder mill. The Duratec V6s were found in cars like the Taurus, which, while it may sound uninspiring from that aspect, the union of the two V6s was anything but that. Stitched together, they would make 435 horsepower and a glorious V12 exhaust note. Don't believe me? Just listen to a straight-piped Aston Martin DB7 with the V12 in it, as that engine is essentially the same exact motor that would have been in the Sentinel. This running and driving prototype would also be fitted with a full interior designed by Ghia that moved the car further into that futurism category. On the inside, it was rather simple, brutalist, and in my opinion, the interior design was quite a bit lacking when compared to the rest of the car. Still though, the completed vehicle was shown at the Pebble Beach Concours in 1996 as the feature car. And still, even with the color change and now full interior on display, the American market just wasn't keen on this new design language from Lincoln, which is odd because compared to the jelly bean of the 1996 Lincoln Mark 8, I think this car looked a hell of a lot better. As a feeler design for the future of the Lincoln brand's design language, the vitriol that this concept was met with wasn't promising. However, across the pond, the Europeans, they didn't hate the Sentinel. In fact, abroad it was received quite well. It even won the Concept of the Year from Motorsports magazine. Lincoln didn't really care though, because selling at Lincoln abroad was about as easy of a sell as selling ice to an Eskimo. With all the luxury offerings from Europe already over there, positioning Lincoln as a luxury status symbol abroad would be a never-ending money pit that Ford couldn't get past. Because the one market that liked the Sentinel wasn't really a target market at all, Ford never proceeded with taking this V12 beast into production. The concept would fade away into obscurity, and both the full-size rolling model and the running and driving one would be sold off to private individuals. Lincoln decided just to milk the existing town car with minor updates for another 15 years. But the Panther platform town cars pale in comparison to how cool the Sentinel was. The sleek New Edge style was unapologetically different, but in order for these American brands to stand out, they had to be. Cars like the Mercedes S600 and the BMW 750i were V12 luxury heavyweights that redefined the standard for a premium sedan, and dynamically, the town car wasn't even close. If Lincoln really made an effort to shake up the market with a bold entry like the Sentinel in the early 2000s, then we might have seen a totally different Lincoln take shape, rather than the dull Lincoln that we got of the mid-2000s. And maybe, just maybe, we would have seen a modern V12 Lincoln luxury flagship in our lifetime. But that about wraps up the video. Hope you all enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you think.